Welcome to GateCrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, our code is this: to make all things more accessible and approachable for everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today, I am joined by Ryan Colt Levy, who was recently announced as the English voice actor for Denji in Chainsaw Man. Hi, thanks so much for sitting down to chat with me again, Ryan.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me, Amanda. It is so cool to see you again.
Yeah, and it has been almost a year
That's
since we
crazy.
last spoke. It's
That
insane.
is so wild.
The passage of time is relentless.
Yeah, especially, I mean, like, legitimately, these last few years, time has never been more squishy.
Mhm.
You know, like, everything's just kind of like this now. So
Yeah, like last year means 2019.
yeah, or it's like sometimes things feel like super far away or super immediate, and you just
Mhm.
can't process what was when. Like
Yeah,
it's so because there are some things from a year ago that feel like I did them last week.
yeah,
And then there are some things I did last week that feel like I did them a year ago.
absolutely. Like in the span of 2 weeks, I went from New York Comic Con. And then that Saturday I had a wedding, so I ended up at a wedding. And
Oh
then
my gosh.
like after 2 days of walking around all day at Comic Con, I immediately then went to a wedding like a psychopath.
That's crazy. That's wow.
And then a couple days later, that same person that I went to the wedding for was like, okay, I'm going on my honeymoon. Can you dog sit? So then I immediately I picked everything up and I went to go dog sit, and I came home yesterday.
Oh my gosh. And it's so weird because like dog sitting on one hand, you're like, well, I'm just crashing at another friend's place. But then
Exactly.
you're basically you're taking after this living creature. So there's a lot of responsibility.
Mhm.
And you're also you don't get to fully relax because you're not at your place. So there's
Yeah,
still this, like, yeah. So welcome home.
thank you. But yeah, since it's been so long and also so not very long since we chatted, I want to ask the most important question. Is peanut butter and jelly still your favorite sandwich?
Ooh, you know, it's up there. I
Yeah.
think like I can think of this one other sandwich. I mean, because I believe the reason I chose that was it was like there's just something simple and perfect about it, and it always can show up. You know, it's all reliable,
Yeah.
unless you have a peanut allergy, then I apologize. But I did have. I'm gonna give a sidebar, you know, as a bonus because there's
Of
this one
course, we live
sandwich
for
I had.
those.
Okay, all right, good. Um, when I was in Amsterdam years ago, I was like 19, and there was this sandwich that was like a toasted baguette with goat cheese, honey, toasted pine nuts, and arugula, and that was it. It was very simple and strange combination, and it's like one of the most like savory, sweet, like it just has everything. It's like a
Yeah.
really delicious kind of go-to thing, but that's more of like a super weird bougie treat. Otherwise, I'm sticking with PB&J.
Now, was this sandwich something that you ordered on purpose?
Yeah, so it was like there was a specific place
Mhm.
that this was like one of the sandwiches that they made, and it was like, you know, when you go to a place and on the menu they're like it's like the star item kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. What a strange combo. And yet it seems like people really dig it. I mean, to me, like goat cheese and honey and stuff is good, but
Yeah.
I just thought it was weird, like with pine nuts and arugula on like as a sandwich. And I was like,
Mhm.
nope, it's amazing.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because the very first time I was ever in France, I don't know a lick of French.
Uh-huh.
I walked into every place and I was like, I'm
What's
so
the best
sorry.
thing?
Do you speak English? That was the first thing I asked. I'm
I'm
like, I'm
sure they
sorry.
loved you. Yeah.
I'm trying. It's not gonna work, bro. Because either I would attempt to speak French and they would just like laugh in my face,
Of course.
or I would be like, listen.
Like,
I'm
can we just,
sorry.
yeah. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
walked into what I assumed was a pizza place, which was my first mistake. And I walked up to the menu and I had a long day. And then I ordered
Oh
something
no.
random off the menu, thinking it was a pizza. And I got a thick piece of bread with like some kind of mayonnaise thing, ham,
Hmm.
and melted cheese all on top.
Oh,
And I was like, this is not a pizza, but I'm going to eat it anyway. And it was great.
it was amazing. I was like,
It
that
was
sounds,
amazing.
yeah.
I went back there every single night that I was in
You're
Paris and
like,
be like,
this
get
is
me that
now
thing
my
again.
go-to. Yeah. I love when that happens.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
amazing.
I'm willing to try anything once. So
Oh,
I was
for
just like,
sure.
fine, thank you, sir.
That's amazing. Well, and that's like, because that story can obviously go the other way where you're like, and
Oh
it was
yeah.
the worst thing ever, but instead it's like you just found your new favorite thing while you're there. I love it.
Yeah. It's really nice to have one thing, especially when you're in an unfamiliar place where you're like, this is the only thing I have.
Well, there's like a comfort zone. It's like, yeah, for sure. That's
Hmm.
great.
Yeah, so I'm so happy that peanut butter and jelly is still up there, as
Oh
long
yeah.
as the bread is toasted for the
Oh
peanut butter.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's the secret.
Yeah. So aside from the very big chainsaw in the room, which we will get to in a second, how has the last year been treating you and your career? Are you still sort of in that I can't believe this is real life state of mind, or have things kind of been sinking in a little bit more for you?
Kind of both, I guess,
Hmm.
because it's been really amazingly incredibly consistent since then that I've still been lucky to just keep working on super cool things with really kind, awesome people. Um, People keep showing up, new folks keep showing up to support all the time. Like I get to do cool things. Like it's still weird to me that this is now my life. Like the day to days I get to do this kind of stuff. And like I look at my schedule and I'm like, this is very surreal
Yeah.
because I just spent so much of my life living a totally different way and watching movies and interviews and playing games and all these things. So it still feels kind of like I'm like sneaking in, like it's like dun,
Just be
dun,
like,
dun,
I'm not
dun. Yeah,
supposed to
like
be
yeah,
here.
exactly, exactly. But I'm having so much fun doing it, and
Mhm.
everyone that I work with just makes me feel so welcome and comfortable that I don't think about it when I'm doing stuff. It's more in the quiet times or like when someone asks me like, "Hey, is this weird?" And I'm like, "It's so weird." Like but the actual like job, moment to moment to me, like I'm so in love with just doing it
Mhm.
that it's so easy to just focus on that and not I don't get in my head about it. I just get into like the zone playtime and then afterwards it's the surreal thing, but no, I love this job and I think I found I mean, I know that I definitely don't want to stop. I
Mhm.
want to, if I can do this forever, if they'll let me keep doing this, I will keep going and showing up happily. I mean, there are some days like for me it has nothing to do with even how cool or how big the project is. Like there are
Mhm.
obvious, things that you want to be a part of or that I love to do or that I'm excited to really get to work on. But at the same time, like I may have a day where I'm just, doing some background characters in a TV show or a video game or something. And I love that just as much. Like
Mhm.
I'm doing that stuff every day alongside all the mains or the supportings or whatever, anything I'm lucky enough to do. For me, it's just acting every day. It's
Yeah.
playtime. And I'm like, this is the greatest job in the world.
Oh, I'm so happy that that's still so in like that's still so innate in your everyday. Like we talked last time about how like if you kind of lose that everyday joy, it's like, oh, then what then what is there?
Yeah,
Um
no, I
yeah.
really don't think I'm ever going to be like, yeah, just another day acting. Like it's to me, all of this I think is always going to be a little like, oh my God, this is wild.
Yeah, a little like I get to do that. That's so cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I geek out all the time.
Mhm. As you should. It's you get to work on super cool things, and listen, it affords really fun like playtime, as you said, and like really fun opportunities.
Well, getting to hang and talk with you, I mean, this is so cool.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So just quick sidebar for any of our listeners who might not be familiar with Chainsaw Man. Here's some brief background info. Set in a world where devils are born from human fears, Denji, a 16-year-old struggling to pay off his deceased father's debts, teams up with a chainsaw devil named Pochita to hunt devils. But when a job goes wrong and Denji ends up on the brink of death, Pochita, hoping to save Denji's life, makes a contract with him and merges with Denji, birthing the human devil hybrid known as the titular Chainsaw Man. And in true Amanda fashion, aka Amanda doesn't know how to act, I binge read Chainsaw Man in less than a day. Uh,
Oh my gosh, you didn't tell me that part.
less than a day,
Oh my gosh.
directly after the anime was announced. It looked so cool and silly that I like had to know what was
What it
up.
is, yeah.
Um, and yeah, you yourself have mentioned before that you've read Chainsaw Man about 4 times in the last 2 years.
Oh yeah. Oh
Would
yeah.
you mind talking a little bit about the story and sort of what about it resonated with you?
Sure, absolutely. As this giant plane goes overhead. Um yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I had basically, I started getting into voice acting professionally in the end of 2019 and started to get back into catching up on anime and reading manga and stuff like that because I had been way out of the loop for a
Mhm.
while. And there were some things that, the classics at that time, like I really got into My Hero and all these, all the obvious stuff that like people were suggesting great things, and there were some deep cut things. But I found a lot of manga was like super deep into like, they're at book 62 or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So I was overwhelmed by like, where do I start with a lot of things?
Mhm.
So Shonen Jump was a great place for me to kind of like start from the top at things and kind of get a sense of what was going on. Some really cool things were starting to come out in like 2019, 2020, a whole
Mhm.
collection of a bunch of stuff. And I don't remember where I first saw it, if I saw it on the Shonen Jump app or if someone had recommended it to me, but it was basically like early 2020, late 2019. And someone was like, this feels like something that's like kind of weird and up your alley because you like weird stuff. And I was like, I
Mhm.
do like weird stuff. Because for me, like, whether it's films or comics or video games or anything, I tend to, even though I'm like a really like mushy loving kind of dude, I really love the dark stuff and
Mhm.
the weird deep exploratory things that are usually like they'll save that for like a special arc or a special episode of all these shows. So like there
Yeah.
are certain things about all of these other shows and series that I've talked about where it's like they go to those places but like at moments, and like they work their way there and they get there. And like the second I opened up the first page of Chainsaw Man, that
Mhm.
first chapter alone is so, it has everything.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, it's bizarre, it's really dark while being incredibly tender and loving.
Mhm.
It's really violent, but in a really like punk rock and bombastic way. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel violent to be flashy. It feels violent
Mhm.
because it's helping propel the kinetic energy of the story. But everything that's really keeping you there are the characters and
Yeah.
how real they are and how relatable they are and how the whole thing is such a deep um idea about like human development and the emotional state and the core of people. And like there's a lot on the surface level that draws you in, but the depth of it is so unique. And I think that it's like it's really brash and funny. It's like it's all these things just immediately. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't even give you a moment to like, oh, I'm just going to adjust these characters. It's like, this is who they are, this is where you are. We are going to subvert all the tropes. We're going to play in this space that's familiar to you, but we're going to flip everything on its head. I love the fact that Denji's motivations aren't like, I'm going to be the strongest, like it's, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like to me, it's funny. Like I was talking about it with someone, how like I love Jujutsu Kaisen. I love all these
Mhm.
different things, but I don't, it's hard for me to emotionally invest in like, when the fight scenes and things are happening and they're just kind of shouting these words and these concepts that are really heady and cool,
Mhm.
but it's like it detaches from me a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas something like this is so visceral and it's such an emotional thing. And the way that even if they're speaking together in a really vulgar and like non-eloquent way, to me it's just so real.
Mhm.
And so I just like I just connect to all of it more. The fighting feels more visceral. The I don't want to say who, but the deaths and stuff like that
Mhm.
are more tragic. Like it's just got everything to me, and it does it on a way that like in a way that few others to nobody else quite has really done.
Yeah, there's a lot about Chainsaw Man that I think like begs multiple rereads and like
Yeah.
sort of would like once more the anime is out, like that would beg multiple rewatches because there's so much that I didn't get in the first read through that like in a lot of the conversations I've been having with like my friends who are either experiencing it for the first time or who are on like their second read through of the manga, or like one of my friends who's like, he's like, I watched the first episode. I've never seen or read or heard
Oh,
anything
that's
about
so
this.
exciting.
And he's like, he is jazzed. But then
Hell
he was
yeah.
also like, I'm going to hurt Arendai. And I was like, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah. Well, what I love about the show that I think is really cool is, in the book, you're creating the like tonal space depending on how fast or slow you read it. And like
Mhm,
that's another thing. Like it's a really easy thing to binge, like you said, in a night.
mhm.
But if you do that, it's really easy to also like you're just so hungry for it that you get all of the stuff, but you miss a lot of the little nuances.
Yeah.
And then the second you go through the second time you read it, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and like and all that stuff. And it's all so there's like double entendres and layers to things where you're like, oh, that doesn't just mean this, it also means this. And
Mhm.
I remember there was one line, and I won't say what because it's very spoilery, but there's like a sequence that happens with the ultimate fate of one character,
Mhm.
and like when it's revealed to them, and then when it's like spoken about later after it happens, and the like phrasing of it I read one way the first time, and the second time I read it a second way, and I was like, oh, that is so much worse than I even took it the first time. Like there's like,
I get really emotional about that.
yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And like that's the thing, is it's so beautifully like it all happens so intensely and so quickly
Mhm.
and so like compactly, and yet we adore these characters, we adore this experience. Like yeah, it's just that freaking good.
Yeah, and like you've said, the characters are really such a big part of this show, of this manga. Um and so
And the
like
music now too
yeah,
is
and
really like
the
that's where
music
I
is
think
gonna
the
kill
hurt,
me.
that's where your friends like saying I'm gonna hurt, like I think that's where it's like it's televised in the music because
Yeah.
it's so nuanced and low-key and sensitive and emotional. You're like there's a heartbeat to this show,
Mhm.
no pun intended, but yeah.
So while Denji and his role in Chainsaw Man is definitely much different, in particular from when we talked about Rody Soul, I'd argue that he has like that kind of gentle heart that not many might expect from a series of like this tone or this scope. Um, I'd love to know like what are some of the things that drew you to him as a character?
Well, I actually, funny enough, think that there's a lot of, in the same way that I connected to Rhodey, I think that's
Mhm.
part of what drew me to Denji, because I have, like many of us, I have
Mhm.
lived many a dark day. I have had some tough times, and I've been in um some really kind of like survival mode kind
Mhm.
of points in my life, and I think I just really related to not only his resilience, but even in the very first chapter when you meet him and he's missing an eye and all these other organs, he there's still an optimism even though
Mhm.
he's been beaten down by life and
He's been
like
through the
literally
ringer.
scooped out. Yeah, like no one else before, at that
Mhm.
age and all these things. And yet he's still able to, whether it's because of Pochita or just because of his just the way that he has
Mhm.
this weird boundless enthusiasm, and there's an excitement to him even when he's deadbeat depressed. And I
Mhm.
think that what I love about him is that like once he gets a taste of all of that, instead of being like, I don't deserve it, he's like, oh hell yeah. Like I'm
I
like,
want
yeah,
more.
yeah. Like I love how genuinely like, how genuinely kind of baby bird he is, to the world, like, because like he has no education. He has there's nothing that he has in his background at this point in his age. Like there's no real foundation other than he has survived like a raccoon, so like, but he has this inherent really big heart, he's very loving. And I think, Pochita is kind of the way that you get a sense of that, seeing them sleeping together and his tenderness towards it. And even just when he first meets it as a little kid, and seeing this creature and realizing, oh no, this isn't, something that wants to hurt me. This is something that it's hurt and I want to save it. And suddenly he's like, oh no, now this thing is not just a friend, this thing is my family. And their bond is so beautiful and all the more special as it goes. But yeah, I think he's just I think he's a really deep character for someone who seems really dense.
Yeah.
You know?
I think someone can be very dense, but also just very like have a really big and strong internality.
Well, he doesn't
Yeah.
know how to express himself.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have the lexicon of words. He doesn't have most of the things that people at his age even a little bit are, have the developmental foundation of. Like he's figuring all of this stuff out for the first time way later than everybody else. So it's like, it's almost like thawing a caveman out of the ice and letting them loose in like modern times. And like, of course they're going to be clumsy and messy about it, but like at his core, his intentions are pure,
Yeah, there's something so wonderfully precious about like watching him discover these new things.
Yes.
And just and like me as a person, like I know all of like the big bad world, and like I have my own preconceived notions about how it's supposed to work, and I have my own ideas of like this bad, this good, versus like him being like give it all to me. Give me everything. I want all of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the fun thing about that is like because of his immortality, so to speak, in the way of his state at the point he becomes Chainsaw Man. There's something fun about like he's just willing to risk everything at every moment for the experience, good or bad. He's just like, we'll if I get to the other side of this thing, we'll talk about it then. But like, and then sometimes I love like, very early on, which I'm sure they'll touch on in the show when they do the Eternity Devil stuff, and it's like they get into, they realize they're locked into this floor, and he's just like, oh cool, so like I can just like sleep for a while and like we can figure this out later. And they're like, what's wrong with you?
Why aren't you freaking out?
He's like, these beds are really nice. Yeah. He's like, we had unlimited time to figure this out. Like I just love his logic is so fun.
That fight sequence is so much fun.
Oh my God. I can't wait for that.
It's one of my favorite things ever. Like I kind of equate it to in the Doctor Strange movie where Doctor Strange just annoys Dormammu to death.
Oh yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think that like the way it's such a cool thing to bring you early on to introduce the not just like ferocity, but like the resilience and the like it's like they touch on like the sheer craziness. And I think that like for a lot of people who read it, like if you weren't already on board, that's the moment, when you're like, oh, he's doing this for 3 days straight and all that stuff. You're like, okay, this is as crazy and cool and ridiculous and funny and nuts like as anything I've ever experienced. And like, how can I not follow this to the end?
Exactly. It's so much fun. It has a lot of just like little pockets to offer that are just like, oh, I can't wait to see that animated.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
So yeah, Chainsaw Man is probably one of, if not the most hotly anticipated debut anime of the season. So knowing this, were you nervous at all about taking on the title role?
It's weird. I get like, I guess this question is being framed as in I've already been cast at this point.
Yes, we'll go with that.
Yeah, because it, like obviously getting the auditions and all that is a whole other emotional thing. But
and I have more questions about that.
yeah, so like we'll save that for the other thing. So like actually being cast, I think there's something very odd. One, I think the roadie experience helped me a lot. Just understand, like, because of him being the outsider character, me being an outsider person, jumping into this massive beloved franchise for a movie and being like, uh-oh, like people might hate this, like, and one, people being really supportive and awesome about it and embracing the character, but two, also realizing, oh, well, if people do hate it, like, who cares? There's always going to be people who don't like stuff. As long as I give my everything to it and I'm proud of it and there are people that enjoy it, I've done my job.
Yes.
And when I got this, I mean, I was, obviously so aware of how big how popular the manga is and all these things. So there was a weird calm about it, in the sense that, like, I love this character so much, as we've talked about. Like, I am confident that I'm going to give my everything into him in the way that I know that I can do that from all the stuff that I've read, from all the things. Like, I see the roadmap. I have all of my emotions ready in place for this, and I'm ready to, like, put myself completely through this thing.
Yeah.
That being said, this is so much larger than me or any of us, and this character, it's like, it's even beyond Fujimoto at this point. Like, every fan, everybody, like, this is everyone's character. So I am well aware at how many other people adore this character, have their own feelings about him, and all XYZ. So, like, I'm going to do my best to make everybody happy, but I know that that's impossible.
Yeah.
I know that no matter what I do, there are going to be people that either don't like my take or whatever it is. And, I can't, like, focus on that, because it just isn't productive. It doesn't benefit anybody. And people are allowed to feel how they feel. Art is subjective and all that. So I kind of just felt like this is so big and so many people care about it, that I am almost, like, indifferent to the storm of it all. I'm able to just kind of, like, take that out of the work. Outside of that, it's a wild avalanche of, like, I've never experienced anything like this before.
Yeah.
But while doing the work, no, I don't feel nervous about it or anything like that. I feel oddly calm, and I don't know if confident. I guess confident is the word. I love this so much, and, like, it's like, what I just know I'm ready every day for it. Like, it's in my blood.
I'm really excited that, like, you feel that way, and that you really have this sort of security in the character, and kind of just, like, knowing what you want out of it, and knowing that, like, yeah, of course you're not going to please everybody. That's just life. But also, at the same time, like, the scope of this property, specifically, like World Heroes Mission was, like, a small bit of a much larger thing, whereas, like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's so cool that you kind of have, like, a much bigger target to hit, where it's like, not everybody might like me, but a lot of people will. And I think that's really fun. Like, I haven't heard you, like, I've heard very little Denji voice from you,
Yeah.
and I'm still sitting here like, this gonna be so good.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm so glad we could finally announce that it's coming out next Tuesday, because we were kind of, like, sitting on it, and then we weren't sure when it was coming out for sure, and then we finally got the word, and they're like, but don't say anything, we're gonna do an announcement thing. So we were just like, and
you were like, I need clear directions, please.
Well, it was just that thing where we were all, inevitably we were getting tagged on Twitter and all these things, and people are just gratefully so, people are really excited about this. And whether they've watched the subbed first episode or first two episodes or not, like, they're like, I can't wait to watch the dub. So then they're like, when is it coming out? And for a while I was like, So I'm finally, very happy to be able to at least tell people, and soon we will just be in it. It's going to be crazy. Like that's the
Mhm.
wild part is the episode at Comic-Con was, that was the first time we got to see it for the first time,
Mhm.
all in full. And sharing it with that massive audience and hearing people scream and the reactions, and like I was just kind of taking it all in, like, okay, this is real now. And
Mhm.
getting to see it now, knowing that that's going to be coming out soon for everybody, that is blowing my mind. Like, because again, World Heroes Mission, it was in theaters for a decent, couple of months, and
Mhm.
then there was a long period of time where it wasn't out. And like now, you could see it if you rent it or grab it or something, but like it's not just like
It's not
out.
readily
Yeah.
available.
And like this being weekly and all this stuff, like it's gonna be so wild. It's
Yeah. And like people are going to be discovering this over
yeah,
and over and
yeah.
over.
I'm so excited, and I really hope, that for the most part I can make people happy. I mean, I'm so confident in everybody else in the cast. They're all so good.
Yeah.
They're all so good. And Mike is such an incredible director. Like he cares so much. He is such an actor's director.
Mhm.
He's not just like taking the paycheck or just doing the thing because it's a cool show. Like
Mhm.
he's giving this so much care and detail and attention, and like we're really getting to, like, this is a rare experience, even just on the dubbing side. Like this is a rare treat.
That's really fun. I really I love hearing that, and like hearing that, like knowing that you are very invested, which like we will get into that because I'm so excited about that. But knowing how invested you are, and also knowing that like the crew behind the scenes and like the crews at the helm are very excited. Like
The
the
whole, yeah.
the thing that I absolutely adore about Chainsaw Man is that the characters come together to form an ensemble. Like it really isn't just Denji.
No.
Um, and like obviously Denji's relationship with Makima, for example, is obviously extremely central to his character arc and the plot as a whole, but his friendships with Power and Aki really strike a chord with
And
me.
Beam.
And Beam! I
There's so
love
many
Beam!
that, I mean, yes, Aki and Power, absolutely, but also
His
just quick.
relationship with Beam is so
Yeah.
funny and I love it.
Well,
I
just
love
the
them.
the quick like sidebar of like there's so many characters that get introduced in such a short amount of time, some of them for a very brief amount of time, and yet all of them are like
I'm
iconic.
emotionally invested in every single one of them.
It's
Like
incredible.
they introduced Angel and I was like, that one. I love them.
Yes, immediately. Violence Fiend, like everybody.
Oh, the
Yeah.
Violence Fiend. I love
Yeah.
him. They're all so
Kopeni, I mean,
fun.
come on.
I love them all so much, but like, especially considering how like sort of combative and just like feral they are with each other at the
Oh
beginning.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you had any opportunities to sort of connect with Reagan and Sarah
Oh
in this
yeah.
way to like have that
That playfulness.
yeah.
So, well, Sarah and I have known each other for a little while.
Mhm.
We actually did, the first time we met in person, we did a convention, like my timeline is going to be off, but I want to say like maybe like 8 months ago or something like that.
Mhm.
And we got to hang out for the weekend, and instantly, like it was like a Denji and Power vibe. She's like my crazy little sister who is just, I mean, she's so intelligent,
Mhm.
she's so full of heart. She's so zany and silly. And like I just remember laughing so much that first weekend with her because she was just such a like goofball. And like I remember the last thing we were leaving, like the last day of the con, and like in the middle of the convention floor, she like propped up her little like roll out luggage and tried riding it and just like completely splatted on the ground and fell on the ground. I was like, help me, like, and I was like, yeah, all of this is, she's just
This
hysterical.
tracks.
Yeah. And funny enough, that convention, we did a panel, and people were asking us like, future things you'd like to be a part of or stuff. And I was like very squirrely about the answer because I was like, I don't like to say blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And she and our other friend Sarah Natacheni, who was there, both had these stories of like other people who were like, well, this person said this thing, and then years later they ended up, and I was like, screw it, I would love to read for Chainsaw Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got to hang out with Sarah a bunch, and we developed a great relationship. And when I got cast, Mike told me who everybody was, so I immediately put all of us, just the main cast, in a group DM on Twitter, and I was like, hey, so this is a place where we can all freak out in private, like, you know, this is our little family zone, like this is our safe space. And Reagan I had worked with, we hadn't met in person at the point that we had gotten cast, but I'd worked with him on a show called The Saint's Magic Power is Omnipotent. And we actually had characters that played off of each other. So, and it was like, I was kind of the wild card, and he was this, you know, this straight, narrow kind of like, I can't believe I have to deal with this guy, you know. So it was, the dynamic, even performance wise, was there. And I remember connecting with him after that, because I was like, this guy's really good. And he was so sweet, he's so kind. And I hadn't seen Sarah in person until Comic-Con again. So for New York, funny enough, that was when I met Susie. We live in the same, we actually don't live far from each other in LA, but we had never met in person until we were getting on the plane. So we met on the plane, and then Sarah and Reagan got there the next, we all saw each other the next day in New York. And it was this like immediate familial, like all of us just fell in love with each other as a crew. And there was also this like immediate sense of like, oh yeah, everybody kind of just feels a little bit like their characters, and our relationship to each other feels a little bit like that dynamic. And there's an absolute sibling nature to the three of us for sure.
I'm so excited. I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Yeah.
It's gonna be so much fun. So
it's gonna
like,
be, I can't believe, like, we're gonna get to do a bunch of like conventions and stuff together, and like that's gonna be such a treat to get to
yeah,
spend
like
more time with
the
them.
press junket for this must be wild.
We got to do so much, even just on the day of the panel at Comic-Con. After we did that panel, they led us around. It was like the Beatles, like they led us around like all these different spots and interviews and all these different places. And like it just was so nice to be with people that, like, even if I had just gotten to meet them, I felt instantly comfortable with them. Like we all just felt like an immediate family, and there was a sense of like, well, we get to do this together. This is great. Like there was no sense of like, I'm terrified what's happening, because it was like, well, we got each other.
That's really sweet.
Plus
really
Mike, who's just the greatest human ever.
Yeah.
Like I adore
Mike's just
Mike.
like, these are my children.
I love him so much. He's become such a dear friend. And like, talk about like, there couldn't be a better person to voice direct this thing, seriously.
Yay. Well, good luck, Mike. I hope Mike's having a fun time as well.
Oh, he's having a blast. We're cracking up. Like when we were recording, you know, for the first episode, when we were doing all of like the Chainsaw Man transformation scene, like towards the end, I would just do these takes, and he would come back on just laughing, like like before he could even get out like a note or like, all right, moving on. Like I would just hear him cackling, because I would just go bananas.
I mean, I have to imagine that there has been some chainsaw noise making, at least a little bit, just for funsies.
Always all kinds of silly noises. We do all kinds of, we're cracking up constantly.
Because we did a chainsaw, like a pod about the manga a couple weeks ago, because we were like, we can't wait, we're gonna do one about the manga.
Amazing.
And in the introduction, this was not scripted, I just decided to do it. I just made a very loud chainsaw noise at the end of the introduction, and everybody on the pod was like,
did that just,
hello?
No, let it rip. That's what I say. Yes, amazing. But they actually, funny enough, they took us to the Chainsaw Man booth at Comic-Con, and they had us like sit down and do a little like, you know, 30-second round robin of like, they gave us all pieces of paper, and they're like, okay, draw Pochita from memory in 1 minute, you know, like all these little things. And then then there was a crowd around the whole booth, and they're like, okay, who could do their best chainsaw sound? So they had everybody revving all these things, and my mom was there. So my mom, because I'm from New York,
Yeah.
so my mom was out there, and we actually have video footage, thankfully, because someone at Crunchyroll was smart enough and kind enough to film it on their phone. But there's a video of my mom in front of all of Comic-Con, just revving up like a chainsaw, and it is the greatest thing in the world. It is my favorite video ever.
I love that. That makes me so happy.
It's the greatest. People like she was the star of the weekend. Chainsaw
Mhm.
Mom took over.
We love Chainsaw Mom.
We
I would
love
like
Chainsaw
Chainsaw
Mom.
Mom to be trending. That would be really fun.
We're gonna get there by the end of the first season for sure.
So something very different about your role for Denji, as opposed to Rhodey in My Hero Academia World Heroes Mission, is that Rhodey was a bit of a mystery to everyone, including you, sort of from the jump. And you talked about how you sort of discovered the character as you went. But Denji is already such an established role with an entire arc. So I wondered, like, do you anticipate having any opportunities to make this role your own, or how do you anticipate you might do that?
Well, I think what's exciting about it is because I know it so well. I mean, aside from what may or may not be in the adaptation,
Yeah.
I have been living in these emotional spaces for a couple of years, and like dreaming about how I would approach them, or thinking about how I would play out certain scenes. And I mean, already that since we've started recording, you know, I think that my performance is pretty different from what they're doing in the Japanese, even though we're staying in the same, like it's not like we're like
Going off the rails.
hey, I'm dingy,
The Americans are doing weird things.
Yeah. But I think the beautiful thing is it's like I think both of our performances are different, but we're both playing to the core of the character. And it's about little nuance choices. And to me, I'm really enjoying like what I love about Denji and having everything there for me to dig into again is like a lot of the time when you see a character and you're introduced to them and you start working on a show, you kind of play the surface layer and learn the layers as you go. But with Denji, I already know the whole onion.
Yeah.
So like from the very first episode, I can play in little emotional nuances and flavors and things that I'm like, well, this is going to come back if we ever get to this thing over here. Like, so there are it's more emotional choices and stylistic choices of how I want to play him early versus as the show progresses versus as Chainsaw Man. So it's been really fun. And Mike's really letting me make a space for myself while also, we're really, the whole point is it's all just about being true to the character and giving Denji what hopefully he deserves.
Listen, I know you're gonna give it, and it's gonna be great. But yeah, from what I've seen of the English dub trailers, and we're getting the dub very soon, which is very exciting. And I've also watched the sub, and in the sub, the voice of Denji versus the voice of Chainsaw Man feel and sound the same. In the dub, do you have or will you, or are you embodying a different voice for him, for Denji versus Chainsaw Man, a la Bruce Wayne and Batman?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously I'm not going to do it right now, but
no, we can keep the mystery.
Yeah, we'll keep it. What I will say is like what I kind of, we had discussed, because there's elements of it where where Denji is still in there. So like there are moments where he may talk and it may still sound like Denji through the thing, but in the moments in which you are like really in the thick of it, we've been calling it werewolf berserker mode, because it's definitely like a tonality and a feral craziness in a space that I've never quite sat in or performed with before. And that's part of like the every take Mike would just come back cackling because he was like, this is insane. So I think we found something really cool, and it's gonna grow as we get to play with it more and more. But I'm really excited about like what we found in the first episode. I think it's scary. I think it's crazy. I think it's funny. I think it's like just unhinged in a way that I hope reads, you know.
I'm so excited for unhit like werewolf berserker mode.
Yeah.
Amazing, iconic.
Well,
Can't wait.
because I mean, you know, to us, especially with that first episode, also to speak to like how I'm choosing to play Denji, and especially in the pilot more than the rest of the season, is like you're meeting him at his most broken, desperate, frazzled, like street punk gremlin, you know, like,
Yeah.
and then instantaneously you see him become empowered in a way that he's never had before. And it's that like that light switch. It's like, you know, the gif of the little girl who has the cotton candy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that's basically what happens internally, you know, when he for the first time he, you know, transforms and realizes like, oh, if I just take all these suckers out, you know, like, and it's just that like,
No one can
you know,
ever bother me again.
yeah, so it's yeah. I'm having so much fun.
I love that, like the unhinged and like the feral gremlin parts of Denji are like the parts that I love the most, because I'm just like,
They're so endearing.
if I was Chainsaw Man, same, I would do exactly that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I
like,
love it.
what's really fun about it is that like a lot of people often forget that horror and comedy are actually extremely closely linked.
100%.
How do you feel about Chainsaw Man's ability to blend these two together? So like it
It's
feels
amazing.
seamless.
It's one of my favorite things. I also think that it's incredibly the humor is very like Western cinema. You know, Fujimoto very much designs this to feel way more like Western media mixed with, you know, traditional manga and all these different things. It feels like a Tarantino movie, or it feels like, you know, it feels like Wes Anderson meets David Lynch. You know, it's like it's very outrageously weird. And I think that like that to me, that's like the juicy bits, you know.
Yeah, I think without the intrinsic humor, there would be so much missing from it.
It makes it so immediately endearing. Like,
Yeah,
it breaks from the gore and the violence in a way where it lets you appreciate it more. It lets you laugh at the gore too. Like like you can fall in love with the characters because they're so silly and dopey and real, and then you can get to a point where there's some extreme violence, but you can read it and be like, oh my god.
like literally
Because
the fact that somebody wears a large intestine as a scarf.
And I remember the
Amazing.
first time I read that, I was like, is this really, we're going there? And then I was like, wait, this is hysterical. Like, I mean, the entire burger shop sequence, like, yeah. And it's like, you know, these are things. I mean, I'm a big fan of have you seen Evil Dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Evil Dead. And have you ever seen a film called Dead Alive?
No.
It's very gory, but it's another like ridiculous zombie movie. And there's this great sequence at the end where there's like all these zombies in a giant mansion, and like the dude basically takes a lawnmower and like holds it up and just revs and basically just walks into the, and it's the same kind of thing. And like it's so gory and violent, but it's hysterical.
Yeah.
And like there's something about it that's just, I think it's also violence and humor are both so cathartic.
Yeah.
And so you almost have the same visceral response to them.
They
and
kind of like scratch the same itch in the brain.
Yeah. So I love it. And I think it breaks up the different flavors of this thing so well. And I think it really helps you fall in love with the characters.
Yeah. And, you know, we've definitely talked a little bit already about how I am just a huge scaredy cat. Not super into horror, but and generally grossed out kind of by the visuals that Chainsaw Man sort of prides itself on. And yet here I am, literally living my best life.
It's interesting because I've noticed that this story in particular, for whatever reason, even people who are normally really queasy or apprehensive to this kind of stuff,
Mhm.
people are just getting on board because I think there's just so much more there and it's so
Yeah.
compelling. And I think it earns the violence, which is, it earns that extreme gore because I think you understand it frames it so well. And, my mom being at the panel and seeing the first episode, I had been bracing her for a while because my mom is very loving and soft and like she loves a great story and depth and all these things, but she's not a huge fan of gore and violence.
Mhm.
And she could be squeamish. Um and I was really trying to prep her, like, not only for the obvious visual stuff, but like, you know, he gets murdered in the first episode. And
Yeah.
the way that we do it versus the way that it's, in the manga, it's like these kind of beautiful static images, and like there's a pacing and a thing that it's tragic, but you're like, okay, I'm processing this.
Mhm.
We really sit with it and scream bloody murder while he's being stabbed to death, and it's horrific and
Yeah,
sad.
I was honestly like, oh, this scene's it's just they're just
it
gonna keep
just
going.
they're just and
Okay.
like, yeah, and it's just so freaking sad. And I think that, like, you know I was like, when we recorded, I was like, Mom, there's gonna be a moment. Just remember, I'm right there with you. I'm there. I'm still here. Just get through that part. But what I loved so much was we watched the episode
Mhm.
and they like usher us back into the like back room, like behind the screen and stuff like that. So I didn't even get to see my mom like amid the episode.
Yeah.
And she sends me a text message and I get a little buzz on my phone and she just goes, I get it. And I was like, yeah,
Oh,
awesome.
that's so fun.
And she was, I mean, like, and she was on board anyway,
Yeah.
but she like really, like, she got the depth of the story, she got the relationships, she got everything. She's
Mhm.
like, now I fully understand why you've cared so much about this thing.
Yeah.
And like, and she's like, oh, I see why. Like, she's like, it's all justified. And she immediately, like, we've been talking about it since. Like, she totally gets it. It's so cool. And I think she's gonna watch the whole thing. So
Oh, that's so much fun. I'm so
yeah.
happy Chainsaw Mom is on board.
No, my whole family is they've always been incredibly supportive, but they're so psyched about this whole thing. And it's so funny for how crazy it is.
There's always something so special about, like, yeah, you have your loved ones who are like, I'm happy for you. I don't know what's happening. And then you have the other ones who are like, they go in and they're just like,
That's my family, man.
I love this thing. Let me tell you why I love this thing that you're literally in. And so, like,
My mom
you
and my
know
sister
it.
like go around in public and like meet people and they're like, my brother, my son's chainsaw. Like they literally, like, they're going around like meeting kids. If they see an anime shirt or something on someone, like they're having they're living vicariously way more fun than I am at this. Like they're going out and being like, Chainsaw Man.
Well, yeah, I could imagine if they showed Chainsaw Man in a theater, I would probably also see your mother again at the theater. Alrighty. So quick question. Are you
Mhm.
interested in some chainsaw facts?
Oh, absolutely.
When we did the podcast about the manga back in August, I learned many chainsaw facts, more than I expected. They were kind of snuck in there into the history of Chainsaw Man. It turned into the history of chainsaws.
I'm
But
so
did you
curious.
know that chainsaws are debated as starting as far back as the late 18th century as a surgical tool?
Oh my God.
It
Oh
started
no.
out as a flexible saw that was actually
Like the like, whoop, 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 like
that's like a later iteration. The flexible saw that it started out as was actually like a serrated link chain with two
oh,
handles on either end, and it was used as a way to remove diseased bones.
oh my God, that is brutal. Have you ever seen a show called The Nick?
No, is it anything like that? I can't remember the name of the
It's
show. I know
basically
it
a
wasn't
live,
that.
it's a drama about like the early days of like surgical medicine in like Victorian era New York.
Oh my god, that also sounds horrifying. The show
It's
I was thinking of
brutal.
was like this show that they showed on like MTV or something, where like people got into like skateboarding accidents and they showed
Oh, I
like
remember that.
bones, and I was just like, no, thank you, no, thank you, I need to leave. But yeah, it started out as this weird flexible saw
Oh
thing,
my
and then
God.
around 1830, a German doctor made like a cranking chainsaw intended for use in the lumber
Like a hand
industry.
crank.
Yeah, sort of
Imagine
like a
like
manual hand crank
you had to
chainsaw.
be either so incredibly strong or like imagine trying to like like don't worry, we're gonna be there. Just
And the first portable chainsaw was actually patented by a Canadian. And this chainsaw is the closest approximation to the one that Denji turns
to
into.
the
So Denji's Canadian, actually.
Canon. That's so funny. That's so funny. Love syrup. I mean, we know that much. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Canada. Thank you for syrup and chainsaws. But yeah, so those are my chainsaw fun facts. I hope you
I
enjoyed
love
them.
it. I love them. Thank you. I've been educated. I didn't know I was going to be educated tonight.
Listen, I'm full of surprises. We talked a little bit last time about the steps one would need to take to really break into a voice acting career. And I'd love to know a little bit more now about the specifics of your career and how you go about auditioning for roles. Like, were you specifically hoping to be cast as Denji when you went out for Chainsaw Man? Or were you kind of just like, please put me in it? Please.
So I read for Denji and I also read for Aki. It's weird because for Chainsaw Man specifically, I never thought I'd actually get the chance to audition.
Mhm.
Like I was expecting the show to just happen and me to be like excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I had always dreamt of getting to read for Denji. Denji was genuinely like, I'll say this as an actor, and this goes for any actor. This is just how the career goes. You don't want for anything because it's just not how it works. So like you may be interested in things or be like that would be super cool, this, that, whatever, but like you don't allow yourself to want a role because you get too emotionally connected and there's just way too many moving parts and percentages, and chances are that you will not get it, you know, regardless of
Yeah.
being able to fit it or not. So I've always been really good about like just doing the work and giving my best audition and presenting my best version of who I think the character is. For there are so many projects that I've read for that I've wanted to be a part of that I didn't book, you know, but not in the way where I was like, I want this. And this was that one time that when the auditions came in, I was like, oh no, like
You're like, I want this maybe too much.
it was that thing where because I just genuinely I wanted it so bad and never thought it was really going to be a possibility, that when it showed up in my inbox, it scared me a little bit because I was like, I don't know, like I know I'm going to give everything to this thing, but I don't know what I'm like, how I'm going to deal with this after the fact, you know, like, and I remember reading and thinking like, okay, maybe like there's no way they're gonna let me be Denji, but maybe I can maybe be Aki, or maybe if I just read for them, they'll just like throw me in there somewhere and give me a background guy. Like so because either way, I was like, I know these characters so well that I know I'm going to give them an audition with my full heart. You know, I don't know whether or not I'll fit what they're trying to do, but I know that I love these guys and will give them my best shot. Just as so many talented people did. And yeah, then what happened was we got callbacks. There were callbacks for Denji. There was a select round where suddenly it was that much more real, you know, because it was a few weeks later and this showed up and I was like, oh, wait, oh my God. Okay. So like, you know, and suddenly there was this sense of, and like, you know, regardless, that first audition I sent in, I was like, I got to be Denji for these few lines, regardless. I was like, this is the greatest gift. I can't believe I even got to do this. And it felt so genuinely good to do that once I was done recording and sending off the audition, I had like cleansed myself of the other worry. And I was like, whatever happens, I feel I'm content. and I will, regardless, I'll be able to watch the show if someone else gets it, whatever it is, this is going to be fine. And then the callbacks came in and I was like, no, I need this. Like, I was like,
You're like, never
seriously,
mind.
yeah. And it was that weird thing where it wasn't like I was like, I will kill anyone in my way kind of thing, but it was like, suddenly it was possible. And I was like, I love this character so deeply. And whether or not, like, I'm like, I can't express it in an email. I can't say it in my audition, but I can perform my audition in a way that hopefully when they hear it, they will know that I will give everything to this thing and that I know this character deeply, at least my version of him. And I just got really, really, really lucky that they believed in me for whatever reason they did. And yeah, Mike called me a few days before I got the official email because I think he knew that just getting an email would probably give me a heart attack. So he sent me a text and was like, hey, bud, you have a minute to talk? And I was like, yeah, sure, dude. And spilled all the info, and yeah, that was that.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Listen, I know I am not alone in the sentiment that, like, I absolutely adored that email exchange you posted with your team about, like,
Oh my God. So that was super real. My agents.
Request. Yeah.
That was literally when, well, it's like when
involvement.
you said when the first announcement that the anime was happening years ago, you know, it was like before they even put out the first teaser, you know, it was just that it was a real thing. And that was when I emailed them more or less and was like, I don't know when this is happening. I don't know if it's even a thing we'll get to see. I don't know anything. I just know that, like, I want all of our eyes on this thing because it's all I've ever cared about. And I would periodically, there's more than one email. I would periodically up until, you know, every time a trailer or something dropped, I would email them and I would send it to them. And I'd be like, I don't know when or how or what's going on, but like, just keep an eye out, please. I just want to be a part of this. I don't care if I'm the sea
just
cucumber.
Slipping this under your door.
Not even subtly. I mean, like, that's the beautiful thing.
Throwing this brick through your window.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the cool thing, I mean, one, my agents are super awesome. They work so hard and they're so kind and they really care. Like, they're not just like, it's not just a numbers and thing kind of game. You know, they really care about me as a person and me as a creative person, and they value, you know, the trajectory that I want and the things that I want to work on. And I rarely bother them with stuff like that. You know, we just usually kind of just go through the motions. But with this, I was like, I'm going to use all of my annoying points and funnel it into this thing. I was like, I don't care if it annoys you guys.
I've been
Sorry.
saving them.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to put
all storing them up
in this basket.
Exactly. So that was I was like, even if this is the only one I ever get to bug them this much about. And it was really funny because when I got the phone call from Mike, you know, my agent didn't know yet. So I actually went back into our old email chain and just emailed them and was like, I just got the phone call. And they were like, let's go. Like, it was like a little, like, you know, we did like a mini celebration, you know, and then later we got the official word and stuff. But it was just, you know, it was so, it's still so wild.
Listen, your passion for your characters and for the work that you do is just so incredibly obvious and apparent and palpable.
Nerd.
And like, you're a fucking nerd. But no, one of the most beautiful things in the world, I feel, is when people are just loud about the things that they care about, and loud about the things that, like, bring them joy and the things that, you know, just make them happy. And it, I know I can speak for, like, a lot of your fans, that to know you're so connected with the material, and to know that, like, to know that everybody else around you is so connected to the material, it's insane. And it's just sorry, 1 second.
No worries.
Okay, Dad.
I love it.
He's going to bed and he's like, can you Shush.
I love it. Good night, Dad.
Like that. But like to know that you're connecting with the material like so deeply makes it better. Like it really it adds an extra textual layer to the show and to the characters that like obviously the show would be great and I would have such a good time if I didn't have this information, but like knowing that you're so jazzed makes me even more jazzed because I'm
Amazing.
just like, I'll watch this 800 times. I don't care. I'll watch this in whatever language it wants to give me. I don't give a shit. Let's do it.
Well, I have to say, I mean, to Uno card it, to Uno reverse card it. I mean, the fact that the first dubbed episode has only aired at Comic-Con, and like, yeah, there was a nice chunk of people that got to experience it there, but
Mhm.
like the fact that the episode's not out yet and the extraordinary amount of support and kindness to me and the rest of the cast, and just, I mean, constant, not just day to day, moment to moment, the memes, the just everything. Everyone is so kind to all of us, and we haven't even put out the first episode yet. Like, I've never experienced anything like this, and
Mhm.
as much as we're already jazzed, as you say, and putting our energy into this, and already so psyched, like I was gonna give 1,000% for this anyway.
Mhm.
Now I'm like, I'm gonna dig into the reserve tank and find the rest of that, and just, it's like, you guys make me want to go even harder. And it's so beautiful. Like, again, to kind of contrast with the roadie experience, like roadie happened and then I got to share it with everybody.
Mhm.
This is happening in real time,
Yeah.
and there's like an incredible emotional tennis match where it's like we're getting to just send things back and forth, and like you guys are legitimately giving us constant fuel to just keep giving more to this thing. So thank you, and thank everybody out there, anybody watching this, anybody that just has ever said anything kind to us or is excited about this. Like, it means so much more than we can put into words, and I can't wait to like really be in the thick of it with everybody.
It's just a beautifully positive feedback loop.
It's so cool, and I love that it's like, for something so crazy and punk rock and brash and all these things, like it's got the warmest fan base. Everyone is so mushy and kind and sweet and funny and awesome. Like, it's perfect. It's great. We're so lucky.
We have to be mushy to make up for the sad.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that's the whole point, is that, I think like a great example of like what makes Chainsaw Man
So
special.
special.
So special is, look at the fan base, and it reflects how deep and beautiful and tender and nuanced the story is.
Mhm.
It's people who like Chainsaw Man aren't dummies. There's a lot there, and people who get it are really deep and beautiful, weirdos, and I love them.
We're here for the weirdos. We stand the weirdos.
We
We
are the
love them.
weirdos.
We love them here. Thank you for being our weirdos. Alrighty, so a couple more questions to round us
Sure.
out. Um, the first one, are there any other anime that you'd recommend checking out, or video games that you're super jazzed about? Anything that you're like super into lately?
Um, well, unfortunately, the last like month has been such a whirlwind of doing
Hmm.
this, and I've just moved into this new place, which is why it's not quite decorated together yet. So I'm like kind of, I have a lot of stuff on the back burner
Hmm.
that I have to catch up on, but I have been reading a lot of manga lately. So I can say that Sakamoto Days and Kaiju number 8 have been like super super awesome. Yeah, like that's kind of been my go-to, because I have a ton of shows and games and stuff I have to
Hmm.
catch up on. I did play before I moved Cult of the Lamb, which was super fun and ridiculous.
I watched a playthrough of that, and that
Very
was so
silly.
silly.
Very silly. But I'm gearing up for God of War. I'm very excited
Mhm.
about that. But I like haven't had time to really take in too much new stuff lately. So I'm like, I want to watch Spy Family. There's like so many things that I haven't even gotten to watch yet. So yeah, I'm a little behind.
Spy Family is such a good time. You're gonna have the
I want
most
like, yeah,
the most
yeah.
zen, just like this is delightful.
Oh, I love
Um,
it. I'm excited.
I watched the first episode of Blue Lock this weekend.
Ooh,
I'm
oh,
really excited for Blue Lock.
you just reminded me. I did watch Edge Runners, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, and that
Mhm.
was phenomenal. And I also want to shout out Emmy and Zach who were in that, who were incredible. Emmy's so good. Yeah, that was the last anime that like I got to see recently, and I like binged that sucker. And
Mhm.
animation, story, everything was like phenomenal.
Yeah, and I will say after I finished Chainsaw Man, I was like, what do now? And then I immediately started reading Kaiju number 8.
Yeah, it's so
I
good, right?
I love a good listen, my favorite okay, we had a very intense conversation on like the GateCrashers Slack the other day about like which monster are you shagging? And and the thing about this conversation is that Dan asked the question, it was ignored for like 2 hours, and
And
then
then
I
it was
was like,
heavily debated.
Godzilla. I was like Godzilla and Mothra. Thank you for your time.
Oh
And
my
everybody
god.
was like, did you plan that answer?
That's so funny.
I
That is
love
so funny.
like kaiju, like Pacific Rim was great. I loved Pacific Rim so much. And then like I grew up watching all of the Godzillas that like
Right. So it's like
when
that's your
I was
jam.
when I
You're
was a
already
small tiny child, I would apparently just like walk into the cul-de-sac and just like Godzilla scream into the sky because I thought that
as
was
you
fun.
should. I love it.
Yeah, and so I binged all of Kaiju number 8, and then Crunchyroll was like, by the way, we're making an anime, and I was like,
Yeah. I again like probably won't come out for like another 2 years or
yeah,
something. But
I'll just
yeah,
keep
that's gonna
that.
be so good. I'm so excited for that. If you haven't read Sakamoto Days,
Mm.
that is a must. It is so good.
I will put it on the list.
It's another
I've
one that
been
like you're not ready for, like you don't know what it is kind of thing. And then when
mhm,
you start it, you're like, oh, I didn't know I needed this in my life. It's perfect.
that's exciting. Okay,
Yeah.
I will put that on
It's
my
very
never-ending
different
list.
from like from a lot of the other stuff. So you're gonna start off be like, what?
Okay, Sakamoto days. Good.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then one last question before we wrap
sure.
up. What can we expect next from Ryan Colt Levy?
Oh man. Well, there is a bunch of stuff. I've been working on a bunch of new things, and a bunch of some cool games and shows and things. Unfortunately, those magical 3 words NDA stop me from getting to say much more than that.
Of course.
But I will say that there is some very exciting stuff that I've been able to work on that hopefully some will be coming out sooner than later.
Mhm.
Um, but for now, it's gonna be all chainsaw all the time.
All
Just
chainsaw
yeah,
all the time.
it's gonna be hardcore. We're just going for it. And what the second I can scream about anything else new, I will.
I will be ready and waiting. And listeners, if you want to be ready and waiting, you can find Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Colt Levy. And you can also check
What a
out
segue.
more. I'm so good at segues. I'm apparently the only person that remembers to plug things.
That's so good.
And you can check out more GateCrashers content on gatecrashers.fan or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at GateCrashersPod. Everyone make sure to go check out Chainsaw Man, which is already streaming on Crunchyroll, and the dub starts streaming. What day is that? On
Next Tuesday, the
October
25th.
25th. So make
Yeah.
sure to check out the dub as well. I'm very excited about that, as you can tell. And you can also read the whole series, plus the new chapter two, the new part 2 chapters,
Yeah.
which are back again.
Are you
on
up to
the
date?
I'm not up to date. I
Oh,
need
it's
to
so
get up to
good.
date, but
It's
I'm
so
very
good.
excited.
It's so good.
I was just it's like the only thing that I remember to actually look at.
Catch
I'm
up
like,
with?
that's
Yeah, yeah,
happening.
yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
do the thing. But those are available on Viz Media and the Shonen Jump apps. But thank you, Ryan, so much for
Thank
joining
you. Oh
us.
my gosh.
And for sitting down with me once again. I honestly can't wait to see what's in store for you next. And you know, when you tweet about it, I will immediately be like, hey, you want to come talk about it?
Your kindness and support and just general awesomeness has been so appreciated this whole time. It's so good to hang with you again. Like we need to make this, you know, a little bit less from a whole year apart next time we get to chat, because you are just so awesome. And I mean, I would love, you know, maybe when the season's done or something, we can get like the whole crew on and do a whole cast hangout or something, because that would be super fun.
That would be so much fun. That would be really exciting. I would love that.
Well, we can. I'll talk to everybody, and we can figure that out for another time. Amanda, you're the best. Thank you. Thank
No,
you so
you're
much.
the
Thank you everybody
best.
for watching.
Alrighty. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.